Chapter 8, Mishnah 8. The final Mishnah of the chapter continues the discussion of the previous Mishnah regarding whether children may take funds from their father's undivided estate to pay for expenses. While the previous Mishnah spoke about sons, this Mishnah deals with daughters. If the father died and left both older daughters and younger daughters, but no sons, so that the daughters are the heirs, the older daughters are not clothed at the expense of the younger daughters. That is, the older daughters may not take money from the undivided estate for their clothing, since this will not be fair to the younger daughters, who need less money to provide for their clothing. And similarly, the younger daughters are not given food from the undivided estate at the expense of the older daughters, since younger daughters need more money for food, and this would not be fair to the older daughters. Rather, they divide the estate equally, and then each one takes her food and clothing allowance from her own share. The Mishnah deals with the question of paying for wedding expenses for the daughters from the undivided estate. If the older daughters married after the father died, and they paid for the wedding expenses from the undivided estate, then the younger daughters are also entitled to marry and have their expenses paid from the undivided estate. Therefore, an amount of money equal to that spent by the older daughters is set aside for the younger daughters' wedding expenses, and then the remainder is divided equally. But if the older daughters had married while the father was still alive, and the father paid the wedding expenses at that time, and now, after the father's death, the younger daughters say, "We wish to marry using funds from the estate in the manner that you married with our father's funds," we do not listen to them. Rather, whatever the father gave the older daughters for their weddings while he was alive, he gave. But the younger daughters do not receive any money for wedding expenses from the undivided estate, and they must pay for the weddings from their share of the inheritance. The chapter ends by noting that there is a difference with respect to these laws between a case where the estate is inherited by sons and where it is inherited by daughters. In this, the power of daughters who inherit is more powerful than that of sons, namely that younger daughters receive support at the expense of sons, but do not receive support at the expense of daughters. Although sons inherit before daughters, a man's minor daughters are entitled to be supported from his estate. This is one of the stipulations that the sage is included in a husband's ketubah obligation. See Chapter 9, Mishnah 1, where this is discussed further. Therefore, when sons inherit the estate, the minor daughters do receive food before the sons receive their inheritance. But when there are no sons, and the daughters inherit the estate, the ketubah stipulation does not apply, and the minor daughters do not receive any special allowance for support. Rather, each daughter must take her food from her own share of the estate, as the Mishnah taught above.